Hello, everybody. My guest today is Jim Berkner. Jim is a good friend of mine that I've gotten to know over the last couple years being here in Bastrop County. He's a part of my weekly breakfast group. If you remember the episode we did with Jim Wither, he's part of the same group, so that's how I met this Jim. We talked about sort of his life being raised in Minnesota, becoming an electrician and deciding to join the military. We talked about some of the crazy times he had during the military, which included military jumping. I think he said he had 50 or so jumps while he was in the military and then 300 thereafter. So we talked a little bit about that. We talked about how he met his wife Dot back in the day in Arizona. We talked about his affinity for rebuilding old cars. He had one of 200 Pierce Arrow back in the day. We talked about total loss that was had in 2011 when there was big fires in Bastrop. We cover a lot of ground, but I've grown to really appreciate Jim and the friendship that we've developed. I learn a lot from him every time we talk. So with all that said, I hope you'll enjoy this conversation with Jim Berkner.
Actually, we found the place in 97.
97.
Yeah, and we moved in January of 98.
The place you are now.
The place, well,
the lot you are now.
The lot we're on now, yeah.
Yeah. Where did you move here from?
We were actually in Buda.
In Buda?
Yeah.
You're not from here originally, though.
No, I'm from Minnesota originally.
Minnesota.
I kind of took the long way.
Jim was right then. We were betting this morning when I talked to Jim Wither.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I know he's not from Texas. I thought it was Wisconsin.
No, Minnesota.
His guess was Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Why'd you come to Texas?
Oh, it's a long story.
Well, we got a long
Are we on the
chance
air
to visit.
now?
We've been on the air since they shut the door.
Oh, really?
That's how it works.
Okay.
It's the same conversation we had in the green room. We'll just continue it in here.
Yeah, well, yeah, I started out, I was going to go to college, going to be a double E type thing, and anyway, the high school that I went to had a really weak math program. I mean, it was basic, trigonometry, algebra, that kind of thing, right? It wasn't anything getting into the, real math type situations. And I went to college in Brainerd, Minnesota, and it was just a little community college type of thing. And the college professor that we had for math was about 2 weeks behind the math needed for the physics class. And the physics teacher primarily had a PhD, not a PhD, but a master's in physics and math. So in a 2-hour class, he would teach us the math we needed for the second hour of physics. It was kind of like, type of thing. And but I could go in the lab and I could set up any experiment they wanted. It just made sense to me.
It just clicked with you.
It just clicked. I mean, they said they wanted to check the time constant on a capacitor. Oh yeah, we'll just hook up this resistor and put the capacitor in line, put a scope on it. Look at it, right? It just made sense, And I was setting up experiments for second-year students, type of thing. And I finally realized that I'm far more practical than I'm theoretical. And I just quit, went back home and got started as an electrician, a construction electrician. And I did pretty well. The owner of, one of the owners of the place didn't like me. And so he wanted to get rid of me. So I went and found a job at Kraft Foods in New Ulm, which was about 15 miles away. And I was there. We had like 13 acres under the roof. Kraft Foods, 1 million pounds of cheese a day going through this thing. And I was one of the maintenance electricians. And anyway, then I was married at the time and was getting a divorce, and Vietnam was going on, and I was either enlist or be drafted type situation.
This would have been what, late 60s?
1970.
70.
Yeah.
Vietnam kicked off in 69?
65, I think, something like that.
Was it really that long?
Yeah, it was quite a long time. And so I went in and enlisted, and I tested good enough to get into electronics command with a European option. Okay, so I went to
Enlisted in Army?
Army.
Army.
Yeah.
Thought you were Army.
I got into satellite communications, electronics, satellite communications. Went to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey for 36 weeks. And at that point in time, because they had such a rank problem, the top honor graduate of the class would make E5, which was, pretty decent. And I made top honor graduate, so I was an E5 in less than a year in the service.
Nice.
And then they sent me to Germany, to a satellite terminal in Landstuhl, Germany. You probably heard Landstuhl. It's the Army hospital.
Yeah.
It was actually a German Army hospital at one time.
Was it?
And then the Americans just took it over, and
After World War II?
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, I spent from 72 to 77 over there.
Mm.
And it was really funny because I was going to, I went to the NCO club one time and got a little bit plastered. And the sergeant major talked me into reenlisting. They promised me, look, $13,000 and, another stripe and a whole bunch of stuff, And so I reenlisted. The first thing I noticed was that they handed me a check for $9,600. And I says, okay, where's the rest of the money? Oh, we got to take taxes out. Oh, by the way, there's another year time and grade requirement, So I sat around for another year over there.
How old were you at the time?
24, I guess. 20. No, I would have been 26, 27, I guess, something like.
Gotcha. So several years in Germany.
I spent from 72 to 77 over there.
Hmm.
Then they sent me to MacDill Air Force Base in Florida to a joint service unit. So we had Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marines all in the same group. And we did real world exercises type thing. We went we were sitting at 300 miles south of Cairo in an abandoned Russian air base waiting to go into Iran for the hostage crisis.
Wow.
Back then, right? And we went to neat places like Jonestown for the body cleanup, and that kind of stuff. And that kind of put me off the service, type of thing, right?
Yeah, that sort of thing would.
Yeah.
That was one of the, you've mentioned that in passing at the Breakfast Club, but I've never asked you about it. And I don't know if that was something you even really talk about, but
I didn't talk about it for a long time. Let's put it that way.
I can imagine.
You
were in the service when that happened?
Yeah, I was there.
Why was your unit chosen to go in for the cleanup?
Well, because we were a joint service unit, and what we did was we provided communications for battalion level and above exercises and real world. Hence Egypt for the Iran hostage crisis and for the body cleanup down there. But anyway, it was an interesting time, and that kind of made up my mind I was not wanting to stay around.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
What was that like? How long after that whole thing happened are you sent in?
We were there, I forget, it was a number of days before we got there. And with the heat and everything else, the bodies looked like balloons, because they had bloated. And started moving bodies. We counted, I think, 600 and some bodies, right? And we started moving them, and we found children underneath the bodies. So I think, I think close to 300 children that we found under the bodies. Mm. It was not a pretty picture for sure,
Yeah. Yeah. How do you go to the next project after you finish a project like that?
Just go back and wait for the next thing to come along.
Did it just feel like, well, this is just part of the job, this is what I'm here doing? Or did you recognize at the time, this is an event that just happened, this is significant?
It was a job.
Just part of the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I had a good time in Florida. They asked me, as soon as I got there, they asked me if I wanted to get into jump parachute. I said, well, heck yeah, I've been thinking about doing it anyway, type of thing. So they sent me to jump school, And I mean, it's a 3-week course, okay? The first week, it's all PT mostly, you know, physical training the whole time. But the first week they teach you how to jump out of the airplane. The second week they teach you how to land, type of thing. And the third week you go up and jump, right? And it's all, you know, very hard physical exercise and a lot of crap going on. And you get up to the door and you're standing here in the door, you know, and on a 141 they have what they call a blast gate that they put out into the wind to kind of, so you don't get bounced off the side of the aircraft as you're going out, right?
Yeah.
And that thing screams like a banshee, right? And you get up to the door, you know, and you look out and you swear you're right on top of the trees. You know, you got your hands on the door like this, right? And you're thinking, do I really want to do this, you know? And then you think, well, after 2 weeks of this crap, there's no way I'm not going out, you know? You are, and then you get under canopy and it's totally silent, you know? It's fabulous.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I got about 50 military jumps.
50?
Yeah.
Are they solo jumps or are you tandem jumping at first?
No, well, it's the military jumps are static line.
They're all static lines, so you're not
Yeah.
pulling your own chute.
Right. And then I got into you know, regular skydiving because there was a place about 45 minutes, Zephyr Hills, that you know, they had a DC-3, and so they'd take up, you know, 30, 40 people at a time, you know, and you'd go jump.
Yeah.
So
how
I
many
got
did you
about
do after the service?
300 jumps.
Really?
Yeah.
A lot of jumps.
A lot of jumps.
Why'd you stop doing it?
Well, I met my wife. Well, okay.
We can jump around all you want
I
to,
can
Jim.
jump around
We
here,
got the
right?
hour. There's no structure to this.
So I got out of the service. We'll go back to that, right?
How long were you in?
I was in basically 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah. And so I got out, and it's a really interesting story in the fact that I was stationed in Florida with a guy that had been in Diyarbakir, Turkey, with another guy. Okay, the one guy came to Florida, the other guy got out of the service and went to California, to Sunnyvale, California, with a startup company. And the guy in Florida called the guy in California and recommended me because he knew I was getting out. And so I start, you know, I call up out there and I talk to the guy for a while, and he says, "Let me put the boss on." I said, "Okay." I start talking to him, and he's very, very British, you know. And he'd mentioned that he'd been with Hewlett Packard in Britain. And I said, "Gee," I said, "you know, in 1975, I was in Berblingen, Germany at an HP plant." I said, I was going to school there, and I had an English instructor by the name of Les Bunce. Maybe you knew him. He said, "Oh yeah, I hired Les in '69." Small world.
Small world.
What was really strange though was about 2 weeks later, I was in a laundromat in Florida, and I was telling the story, right? And this guy looked at me kind of strange, and he says, "You know, I had the same instructor in Jacksonville, Florida in 1969.
Wild.
It's a small world for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I got out of the service and, you know, packed up everything from Florida and just moved to California, and got in on the equipment, got started, and once again, being practical, it was easy for me anyway.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people didn't understand how the system worked, and it just made sense to me.
What kind of a system were you working with?
It was photolithography.
Photolithography.
Yeah. Actually, you imprint the shape of the circuits on a piece of silicon.
Mm.
Okay, it's like a photoresist type material,
Okay.
and you can you develop it, and so that removes the material, right? So you can either implant ions into that area, you can etch it away, and you make your circuits, and then you put another layer on top of that, and you build it up for your transistors. Transistors, resistors, capacitors, the whole thing can be done that way.
Why do you think that clicked with you? What is it about your way your brain works that just made that make sense? Because you hear that about like piano prodigies when they're kids, that just some people can sit down at a piano and it just makes sense to them. They just know how to play.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I was a kid, think I was 9 years old. One of my dad's tractors, blew the transmission, and it was a transmission. It was like about this long and about this high type of thing, 3 levels inside the thing. And I asked my dad if I could, rebuild it. And there was a guy there that from the Ford, this was at the Ford place. And anyway, we rebuilt. I put the whole thing together, and he says, "Okay, now you always go through and you check all the gears and make sure that each of them turn the way they're supposed to, right?" Got to the 4th gear, locked up tight. Okay, what did I do wrong now? He says, "Oh, there's a lock ring on the bottom row that has to be reversed in direction."
Oh no!
So I pulled the whole thing apart.
You had to take the whole thing back apart.
Yeah, to reverse this one little lock ring.
Wow.
But,
and how old were you?
9 or 10, something like that.
So you had it from an early age.
So I mean, like I said, I look at stuff and it just makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much does that, so that skill set started as a kid and then you made a living out of it.
Right. Yeah.
How does it manifest itself now in what you do? Where do you use that skill set?
I use it, like rebuilding the car. I got the Pierce Arrow from my grandfather in the 60s when I first got my driver's license, and I drove it for a while, the big old tank. But then I tore it apart and completely rebuilt it. So
let's come back to that, because that's an area where we have shared interest, like the dissecting and rebuilding of cars is something I think you and I, that was some of our first conversations one-on-one were based on that sort of shared affinity. But you were talking about how you met your wife, you had gotten out of the service.
Okay.
I want to circle you back to that one. Okay. I'll keep you free from trouble when she rewatches this.
I went to California, okay?
So from Florida to California, and you went for the job with HP?
No, it wasn't HP. It was actually a startup called Optometrics.
Okay.
At the time, and at the time, the industry was 3 to 5 micron technology was good. In other words, your line space widths were 3 to 5 microns. That was really good technology, right? And the company I went to work for was a startup, and they had a lens that could resolve 1 micron. So, I mean, this was like
revolutionary.
I mean, really, really good, But the mechanics and the software and everything else all had to be developed to be able to control the stages, because you have a wafer. You started out with like a 2-inch wafer, and now they're up to 12-inch wafers, But to be able to actually control the position of each die, this was it used to be that they just had a mask that had the shape what you wanted, and you just put it down over the wafer and you exposed it, right? Well, this was what they called a stepper. Is what it did was it had a small area, and it would move the wafer underneath and keep exposing a pattern on top of it. Okay, this was new technology, literally. And so I fought from September to January sometime. They gave me a machine, literally. This is your baby, you get it going, right? So I finally got it accepted at the factory, and they said, "Oh, you're going to take it to Arizona." Oh, okay. So anyway, I took it down there, and I was installing it, and was staying at a hotel there, and just happened to meet my wife right there at the hotel.
At the hotel?
Yeah, on the dance floor. Anyway.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you and Jim Wither have that in common then, because that's where he says he met Mariella, was on the dance floor.
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of dance happens at a hotel?
Well, they had a country western thing at the time. I mean, in 1981, country western was, big deal, And I met her, and she's got a whole bunch of stories about that anyway. But
what's your version of it? Do you remember? Do you remember anything from it?
Well,
be honest. Don't make up a story.
uh, she claimed that this friend of hers, dragged her along to the dance there, and this one guy kept bugging her, and she started dancing with me, and so we just stayed on the dance floor because she didn't want to go back to this other guy.
Oh, you weren't the guy that was bugging her.
No.
She used you as a decoy.
I was a decoy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's great.
But yeah, and anyway, I made a few jumps down at I forget the name of the drop zone. It was south of Phoenix area, kind of like out in the desert area, and I somehow managed to talk her into making a jump.
Did you really?
Yeah. Anyway, it was her first and last because, I mean, I think is what happened is they took her too far away because they had a little microphone on her so they could tell her what to do type of thing, right?
Yeah.
They put her out and she couldn't hear the microphone.
Oh no.
And anyway, she got to the ground, and I think she did okay until a gust of wind caught her and threw her on her back. And it dragged her a little ways, and she finally got it under control. But anyway, that was the first and last one.
She's officially retired from it.
And because I was more into her than I was skydiving, I mean, I just kind of dropped it.
Yeah. Would you ever do it again?
I think I would. I would be fun.
But you just couldn't get her to
Actually,
do it again.
I keep telling Dot that I'd like to be thrown out at 15,000 feet.
At 15,000.
Yeah.
What's a normal jump height?
16,000 is pretty much, depending on what your altitude is when you start.
Yeah.
I mean, like if you're at 6,000 feet to start with, you go up to 10,000, you're starting to run out of air.
Right.
But
yeah, if you're at this altitude.
Usually about 15,000, somewhere in that area.
That makes sense. I did it once
Gives
in
you
college.
about a 1 minute drop.
Yeah. I did it. I was a sophomore in college, and I had an opportunity to go with a group of friends that one of their parents had paid for it. It was this like commemorative skydive for a girl that was in our class, our senior year of high school, that died. And I'm a one and done skydiver myself. I'll tell you what got me, Jim. If I figured, okay, I'm going to muster the courage to do this, and I may only do it once, so I want the full experience. Well, they ask you, they don't let you go by yourself unless you have a tandem jump.
Right.
So you have to go tandem. And this guy is asking me, like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to just jump out and coast? Do you want to jump out and do flips? Like, what kind of experience are you looking for? And I told him, I want the full experience one time so that if this is my last time, we'll be good. So we jumped out of the plane and flipped, and all of that was great. When he pulled the chute, he did this thing where you pull one handle and let the other handle go.
Yeah.
And it spins you like a centrifuge.
Yep.
That messed my world up for like 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
Oh, man, I got so motion sick from that.
Huh.
And I couldn't get over it literally for 2 weeks. It was like I'd get up and go walk around and just feel dizzy. Mess my inner ear up or something.
Now, we did a lot of RW too, with relative work they call it. Basically, you get a hold of a bunch of other people in the thing, right? And I got
like falling in a pattern.
I got in one time on number 40. We had a ring.
40.
Yeah, had 40 of us in there.
Wow.
2 airplanes went up at the same time.
Wow. So you meet your wife at a dance. How soon thereafter are you an item? Do you recall?
Within a few weeks.
Within a few
type
weeks.
Thing,
She was in Arizona at the time.
She was in Arizona. I think I had to go back to California to do some stuff and whatever else. And then we just kind of clicked, and that was it,
Yeah. So did you make your way to Arizona, or did she make her way to California?
Well, I got the machine accepted in Arizona, and they said, well, okay, you got to move there, So I moved there, it worked out perfectly.
It worked out well.
Yeah. Yeah, we met March 20th. That's our important date, Got married on my birthday, which was just a couple days ago.
Yeah.
So I got a heck of a birthday present,
Heck yeah, you did. Yeah, it makes it easy to remember your anniversary,
43 years ago.
43 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just had a birthday. We
Yeah.
both just had a birthday.
Yeah,
How old are you now?
77.
77. I thought that.
Yeah. You're how old?
39.
39. Wow. I would be 39 again.
Do you have any other friends that are in their 30s? I may be taking liberties there by calling you a friend, but anybody that I see weekly
I
for
hope
breakfast,
so.
I'd call a friend.
Well, we've got neighbors that, well, their kids are, you know, I mean, we basically have grown up with them, literally. I mean, we were around them. We went to their weddings here not long ago, and one of them just had a baby, and so I mean, and my neighbor, the one I'm doing the LaSalle for, the car, uh, just the most wonderful people. I mean, with the exception of one house up there, we got a great group of neighbors. I mean, it's a fabulous neighborhood, you know.
Yeah. What caused the move from Arizona to Texas? You said that was
With
late 90s?
That was actually they started putting equipment into, well, at the time it was Motorola, and so they wanted me to move down there to, to help with the installations and do that stuff. So we moved down here, and we found a place in Buda that was, the house was about 3/4 finished, I think, something like that. And we bought it. It was a half-acre lot, and we had everything we wanted. I built a gazebo like the one that, out at the house there, and built a deck on, and I had a garage. I was going to finish the Pierce Arrow. That's another whole nother story again, but all of a sudden we came out here, and I don't know if you remember Red Bluff, the bluff out here where Riverside is. Used to be a road where they had potholes that would swallow cars. I mean, literally, you know. And we were out for a Sunday drive one time in my pickup, and it was just one of the small Ranger size pickups, right? And scared the heck out of Dot because she thought we weren't going to get out of there. And we came up on a sign that said "Lot with a View," and there was a little 2-lane path back into the woods, And they said, "Well, we can't afford it, but we'll look." We bought it immediately.
That's how those things work. We can't afford it. It's not a good time, but let's just go look anyways.
Yeah, it was really funny because our builder at the time said, well, it'll take you 4 to 6 months to build the house. Okay, So he said, go for it, type of thing. And we talked to a realtor in our house in Buda. The guy says, well, it'll take, you're top of the market. You'll probably take 4 to 6 months to sell it, right? Second people bought it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it was like...
That's how that goes. The best laid plans.
Really?
Yeah.
But,
so you bought that property when?
97.
97.
Yeah.
And you moved into that house?
January 98.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, I had the garage built at the same time so I could work on the Pierce.
Yeah. Talk about the Pierce Arrow. That's a fun backstory.
Yeah. Well, I got the car from my grandfather. It was always parked in the backyard of his place under tar paper.
In Minnesota?
In Minnesota. And I was always kind of intrigued by it. I hadn't gotten into it, but I knew it was there. And he had been the chief of police in New Ulm, and he went blind with diabetes. And I asked him, when I got my driver's license, I said, what are you going to do with that car? And I got it from him, right? And the engine was a little bit frozen. We, cleaned it up and drove it for a while.
What year was it?
It was a 30.
30.
Yeah. Big old tank. I mean, literally a tank. And then I got out, came back to Minnesota, or came back to Sleepy Eye, and decided, I got into the Pierce Arrow Society, and they were talking about rebuilding cars and doing all this stuff, And so I got the wild hair to restore it. I tore it to pieces, right?
Were you already here in Texas at the time?
No. This
No.
was in Minnesota. I tore it apart.
Oh, so this is prior to Florida.
So anyway, I got caught in a divorce in the military and blah blah blah. So it's in a warehouse in Minnesota from 68 to 98. And I finally went and got it and brought it down and started working on it. In 2001, I drove it to Buffalo, New York.
You drove it from Bastrop County to
Bastrop
Buffalo, New
in the
York.
middle of summer.
Good grief.
But everything was going good until we got up into the northern states, right? I put in a liner in the tank that was supposed to be good for ethanol gas. Well, it was good for 5% ethanol. Didn't say it was 8% up there, right, that they had. It turned the interior of the gas tank into what looked like coffee grounds.
Oh no.
So every 100 miles I was going underneath the thing and changing the fuel filters, you know.
Oh.
But yeah, I drove it, and then after, on the way home, because the thing had backfired so many times and whatever else, I got into someplace in Kansas and snapped an axle. So anyway, we ended up riding back on a back of a truck type thing.
You had it towed from Kansas to here?
Yeah.
What possessed you to want to drive it to New York in the first
It
place?
was the 100th anniversary of Pierce Arrow.
Oh.
They started in 1901. This was in 2001.
Wow. How many of those cars were made?
I don't know. I know that there was only 200 of this particular body style, and there was only 5 of them left.
Wow.
And then the fire in 11 took it, and so there was only 4 left. And there was a guy up in Missouri that had one for sale, an identical car. And I said, send me a picture of it, maybe I'll, buy it. I mean, I think he was only looking for like $40,000 or something, He sent me a picture of it. It was the most god-awful blue and white you ever seen, right? And I would have bought the car and repainted the outside, except that he had done the interior in blue and white, pinstripe. It was bad news.
That was too much of a project for you?
Too much of a project,
yeah. Yeah, boy, the 11 fire. What was that like to live through? Do you remember that day?
Well, it's really funny. I had been in Arizona because our headquarters, getting back to Texas and whatever, I changed companies and went with a Dutch company. They had good equipment and better equipment, and the company I was with was starting to, they weren't advancing as well as they should. So I went with this other Dutch company. And what was I going to say? I forgot.
You were talking about the fires.
Oh, the fire. I had been in Arizona teaching a class on the equipment. And I got home that day. I got home on that weekend, and we didn't go to church. We just kind of sat out on the back porch and had coffee and whatever. And that afternoon, somebody came by and knocked on the door and said, "You better get out of here. There's a fire." So we were evacuated. We didn't think anything of it. I mean, you couldn't see any fire. We didn't realize the fire was on the back hill already. And we packed up a few things and got the heck out of there. Unfortunately, I left the Pierce Arrow in the main garage, and it burned. So
Burned.
It burned. Yeah, it was a mess.
What'd you grab? What'd you grab on the way out of the door?
Wife and dog, and that was pretty much it.
Wife and dog.
I mean, I took and I said, "Where's your good jewelry?" type thing, Oh, the top 3 drawers of her jewelry cabinet, So I picked them up and threw them in the safe, right? And we left. That was it, We knew that there was somebody that had been on the golf course that told us that the house on the hill was on fire,
Day of.
Day of. So we knew, and the next day, we kind of sneaked back in.
Oh, you were able to sneak back in.
Well, yeah, we took some back roads to get there.
Yeah, because they had it locked down pretty tight.
It was pretty tight, right? But I knew I ran across that one open field there, and found that the house was gone. We took some pictures and whatever, and Dot immediately called the insurance company. And this gal says, it's too big for me. She said, oh, may have somebody make contact with you, right? And that day we headed for Houston to Dot's son's place. And on the way down there, they called up and said, go to HEB and you'll have $3,000 waiting there for you, to kind of tide you over. Okay, I'm not going to argue. But State Farm was really good. Of course, they jacked their prices up beyond anything reasonable after that.
After something like that happens.
Yeah. But we got the house rebuilt, and that was the way it was,
What was left of the Pierce Arrow?
It's funny. I cut it up. I'm trying to remember. I think the front fenders, rear fenders, firewall, 3 of the pistons were melted in the engine. It got that hot. But anyway, so.
What's it like when something like that happens and you realize, oh, we've lost everything in that house?
I'd much rather lose everything like that in a fire than I would in a flood. You really stop and think about it.
Because you don't see that stuff anymore. It's just gone.
It's just gone. And we went to I can't tell you how many estate sales, and bought a lot of stuff. I mean, we bought, some new stuff, but a lot of it was estate sale stuff. I mean, I could take you through and show you how many tons of stuff we bought,
Yeah.
But everybody looks at it and says, wow, where'd you get that? Well, just bought it at an estate sale.
Estate sale. Yeah.
Type of thing.
Was it harder on you or your wife?
I think it was both of us,
Yeah.
Of course, we knew the house was gone that night, and I looked at Dot and I said, well, it's a new adventure. Really.
Yeah. Play the hand you're dealt.
Play the hand you're dealt,
Yeah. How soon after the fire happens do you start to rebuild?
Well, we sifted through. Probably it took us, a few weeks to get everything sifted through and find anything that was of any value.
Did the jewelry survive in the safe?
It did.
Oh, it did.
Some of it.
Okay.
And there was an old jeweler, a guy that he was an old hippie, I think. And he cleaned up a lot of stuff for us and did that kind of thing, right? And all the guns that I had, all had to be gone through and reblued, and I had an 1864 Springfield that I had a stock made for it, because it was the only one that had actually started to char the stock. The rest of them were good.
They were in a safe.
They were in the safe.
Mm.
I mean, it must have been a real, because I had quite a bit of ammunition laying around. It must have been a real circus.
Real lively.
Real lively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long did it take after that happened before you felt settled back in? Because I know, like, when Ashton and I moved here, I don't think we really felt settled for 12 months.
Well, we'd been on the site before, and my garage 30 feet away from the house didn't burn.
The barn didn't burn, but the house burned.
Yeah, go figure.
And the Pierce was in the house.
Pierce was in the house. Well, my trailer, that 24-foot trailer I got, that I had the T-Bird. I had a 66 Thunderbird that I had usually parked in the garage, and if some friends wanted to ride, in the Pierce, so I gave them a ride. So I swapped positions, right? The truck and the trailer survived.
Huh.
So the T-Bird survived.
Was there any rhyme or reason to why?
No.
Huh.
It burned up this far from the truck and stopped,
Wow.
you know.
So after it happens, you go back and you assess, okay, this is a total loss. We're going to rebuild. How long until you're back in a home and feel like, okay, we're settled back in now? That's pretty disruptive
It
to
took
go through.
about 6 months to build the house, you know,
Yeah.
because we started almost immediately. We had Knoll Homes build it, and they did a good job, I think. I'm real happy with it,
Yeah.
you know.
That's who built our home too. We built it for the Helmicks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In fact, I think Gene and Mike were instrumental in us getting Knoll.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think I'm pretty sure that they did.
So you knew the Helmicks
Yeah.
from back when?
Yeah.
Okay. How did you know? So we met through the breakfast group. How did you know all the guys in the breakfast group prior to us getting together? You had to have known Jim Wither because he's who invited you, right?
Yeah. I'm just trying to think how, how the whole thing came about here. I think, well, Gene and Mike went to the same church we did,
Okay.
and I think Dot played cards with Gene, and I think that's kind of how the whole thing came about.
Yeah. That Wednesday breakfast is something I look forward to quite a bit.
Oh, I do too.
It's a thing that's on the calendar that
Yeah.
I don't miss if I can avoid it. What is it about that group or that sort of regularly set cadence of having something to go to?
Oh, it's just kind of fun.
Yeah.
It's nice to talk to them, and you get there's a lot of different personalities there, and you get a little bit different point of view from everybody.
Yeah.
It's just nice.
It's nice to have people, faces that you know you're going to see every week,
Mm-hmm.
that you can build some trust and rapport with over the course of
Mm-hmm.
lots of conversations.
Right.
And there's been several times when I've got something going on in my personal life that I need some wisdom on. And those are,
I don't know if we can give you any wisdom.
you usually don't. I mean, it's usually somebody else, but no, that's why I do it. I mean, it's, mentorship to me is something that, from an early age, I recognize the importance of for whatever reason. It's kind of like you're seeing the way things work mechanically.
Mm-hmm.
I knew from a young age that there's people that have gone through things that I'm going to go through, and so I just need to learn what they did, and I can get through bumps and bruises as long as I know there's a way through it. So having that group where I know I'm going to see these guys every week,
it's nice. It's just pleasant. They're all of them are very nice people.
mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
And it's nice to have that thing to look forward to with people that you can trust.
You always liven it up a little anyway.
So. I try to just be quiet and not be the guy that talks all the time, but I get looped into.
I got to open my mouth too much too.
Well, I'm very much an outlier in that group. It's one of my best jokes that I have with my two boys. I think I've told you this before.
No. What?
They know that breakfast as the old man breakfast.
Oh, okay.
That's what I've referred to it as. For no offense meant there.
Well, you're
right. Yeah, they know that Wednesday mornings Daddy goes to old man breakfast, and I've brought them to a handful of breakfasts. Yeah. And every week, when I go to leave the house, Daddy, where are you going? I've got the old man breakfast this morning, and they always ask, "Oh, well, can we go?" And so I told them one time that, this is a group of older guys that I've gotten to know. And it's what I refer to as the old man breakfast, but they don't refer to it as that.
Well, it's just kind of pleasant, I mean, like I said, it's, everybody seems to get along. I mean, there's no talk of politics.
Yeah. We talk about politics every once in a while.
Yeah, I kind of shy away from it.
We've drifted into that lane every once in a while. Yeah. But the joke part of it was that I told my boys that none of the guys in the breakfast group call it the old man breakfast. And they got real inquisitive. Well, what do they call it? I said, they call it breakfast. That I'm the only one that refers to it as that.
Well, we are a bunch of oldies, I guess. Oldie.
Talk about that mentorship thing. Do you have any mentors in your life that were important to you, looking back?
I can't really say I have,
Yeah.
I just kind of muddled my way through things, I guess.
Yeah. What were your parents like?
Well, my dad was, I guess what what my wife likes to call is the little man syndrome. He wasn't real tall, right? But he would like to be Mr. Completely, type of thing. And my mom was, she was a hard worker, but I think she was, as a kid, I think she was spoiled because she liked to stay in bed in the morning type of situation. Now, living on a farm, I mean, she did all of the wife stuff, the canning and I mean, on a farm, all the stuff that you're supposed to do as a wife type of thing.
Yeah.
But I can remember we never had breakfast fixed for us. We always had just a bowl of cereal sitting out there on the, she'd lay out a bowl of cereal for us, and that was it.
Yeah.
But
Are you more like your mom or your dad? You thought about that?
I don't know, probably a little bit more like my dad in some way, in most ways,
Yeah. Where do you favor your dad versus where do you favor your mom? Like I see bits of my dad in me in some instances, and then I see bits of my mom in me in some instances.
Well, I think my dad was a very stubborn individual, and I'm kind of that way myself, And I mean, he was a worker. He was a hard worker, and I try to be a hard worker.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of work. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. What's been, so you're 77. Think about your 39-year-old self. Where were you at 39? Were you in Texas yet? Or were you still California?
Oh gosh, let's see. I think I was 34 when I met Dot. Something like that.
Okay. So think about your 39-year-old self. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell your 39-year-old self about the years that are coming?
I don't know.
Or would you not want to talk to him because you wouldn't want to mess things up?
I can honestly say I think I've had a pretty good life. I mean, just an example. I told Dot that if she married me, I'd show her the world. She ain't let me forget about it, literally, right? Because I mean, we've done a lot of traveling, and we've seen a lot of the world. And I think the best trip we ever had though was in '85. Since I'd been in Germany and Europe, I knew how to get around there and everything. And so we flew into Amsterdam, rented a car, and 3 weeks later we flew out of Rome. Type
3 weeks.
situation, So we spent 3 weeks on the road. I made one hotel room night in Amsterdam, 2 in Paris, and 2 in Rome. The rest of the time we just found hotels along the way. Type situation.
So you kind of knew these are our stops on the trip.
I kind of had an idea. We went around Amsterdam a little bit, and then we went a little town called Volendam, which was a little seaside village type of thing. Just really old type situation. And Madurodam, which is a miniature city type of thing. Huge area with, and anyway, then we went from there to Brussels, to Paris. And I think one of the most fun things though was we had a hotel outside Orly Airport, and we got on the subway and came up right outside the Arch of Triumph in the evening, and it was fully lit up, the Arch of Triumph, right? I don't know if you've been there.
I've not been there, but I know what you're talking about.
But Dot was kind of like, she was in awe, I mean, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, we were in October, we were past the tourist season. So we walked into Notre Dame Cathedral. We went up to the top. We went to the crypt. Walked into the Louvre. Just basically, I mean, there was no lines, nothing. type of thing. Went up to the sepulcher, went up to the top of that one. When we went down to the basement, and there was really like nothing in the basement, but there were some rugs on the floor. And we were walking along, and we walked on one of the rugs, and I said, the floor moved. So, and there was a guard over around the corner someplace, and nobody else was down there, right? So I pulled the rug back, and here was a, pie-shaped thing, and I lifted one of them up, and here was the steps to go down into the underground, right? And anyway, Dot was like, "Oh, don't do that! Don't do that!"
Did you do it?
No, we didn't go down.
Oh.
But anyway, it was really cool. I just put the thing back and put the rug back. And
where was that?
There was the sepulcher. It's the big white one that's up on the hill.
Okay.
I don't know all the history of it, but there's an art gallery, art village right outside of it, and whatever.
I wonder what's down the steps. You ever thought of recreating that trip? Like how much of your stops do you think you could remember?
I mean, we went to Neuschwanstein, Linderhof castles down in Munich area. Went down into Munich itself and saw the Glockenspiel, they call it. It's a clock that's got mechanical arms and stuff that, every so often it goes off, and these figures move around circles, and it's really pretty cool.
Huh.
But we went there, and then we crossed into, let's see, we went to Venice, and then we went back over to Vienna, and then went on down from there down to Rome. And like I said, there was nobody around. I mean, it was nobody around.
Yeah, that's cool.
We
spent a couple days in Rome, and it was the exact opposite of that. There was people
crazy
everywhere. It was packed.
One of the last trips that we took, we went to Barcelona, and I'd been to Barcelona when I was in the service, and they had that magic fountain, and I wanted Dot to see it. So we got over and got to see it, right? But when the trip went, was on a Viking, and we went around the coast, went to Monte Carlo, and then down to Pisa and Rome, and came back around and ended up in Venice. And there were 9 cruise ships in Venice at the day that we were there. I mean, you didn't have this much space between you and anybody else anywhere. We didn't even go into the cathedral, or go to the top of the tower or anything else. We just kind of walked around, type of thing.
Yeah. We spent 3 days in Rome, and one of the days we went to the Vatican. We took the whole Vatican tour. We got to the end of the Vatican tour. You go through all of the areas where there's the paintings on the ceiling, and each little stop you have a high point. Sistine Chapel's there. And we get to the very end of it, and there's a section where you can go into this room, or there's a section where you can go this way to exit. And we had felt like we had seen everything we needed to see, so we decided we'd go back to the hotel, and that was our last day there. And we got to the hotel that night, and we take our phones out, and we were looking at pictures, and we were looking at the pamphlet we were using to kind of know what are the high points to hit. And we realized that at the end of that trip in the Vatican, the end of that little tour, the option to go right instead of going left to go to the exit, the option to go right was to go into St. Peter's Basilica. So I have been to Rome, through the Vatican, through every part of that Vatican tour, and I got up to the door of St. Peter's Basilica and missed it. Yeah.
Bummer.
We left a box unchecked.
Oh, man.
So maybe I'll go back to St. Peter's Basilica and go see it, and you can go to the place with the secret staircase that goes down.
Oh, that was in Rome. I mean, in Paris.
Yeah, that was in Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we got into the crypts in, I can't tell you how many different churches.
Yeah.
We went to Verdun, France, which was one of the sites for the First World War. And a huge military cemetery. You ever been to a military cemetery?
No. Well, Arlington.
Yeah. I mean, you got rows and rows of graves type of thing, right? And at Verdun, they had Fort Douaumont, and it had a gun that this basically just a big pile of dirt type of thing, and it was underneath there was a cannon. The cannon sat like this, and there was a big metal container around it with a metal top on it, and the gun would they could crank it up, and the gun would drop down like this. They'd shoot, big cannon type of thing, right? And then they would come back up and they'd bring it down and reload it. And you go up to the top of that thing, and you could see where the bullets had plowed holes through or tried to plow holes through the metal. I mean, I'm sure the metal was really, really thick, but I mean, you could see where the bullets had bounced off this thing.
Wow.
It was pretty neat.
Yeah.
And then the main building for it was shaped in a cross. And if you go around the back side of it, there was windows like about this big, and all the bodies and bones that they couldn't identify, they just put in there underneath this. So you go back around and look, and here's this whole area full of bones.
Whoa.
It's crazy,
Yeah, that's bizarre. Where is that?
Verdun, France.
Verdun, France.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
What place have you not seen that's on your list?
I want to see Japan.
Hmm.
I would like to go to Antarctica. I think that would be pretty cool to see.
Just to say you've been there?
Just to say I've been there, and see the some of the wildlife and some of the stuff that goes on down there,
Yeah.
But actually, if you look at it, there is a Berkner Island down there. It was named after my, gosh, what would he be? Great uncle, something like that.
Wow.
He was on the first trip with Byrd to the South Pole. He was a radio engineer.
And got an island named after him.
And actually, up in Dallas, there's a Berkner High School. He went back and was one of the founders of TI.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, he's got a resume. I mean, a humongous resume.
What is Berkner? Where do you hail
German.
from?
Krautnies.
German.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jim, we're almost out of time here, but I have a question that I have made a habit of asking, and I'm curious to know what your take is on it. Like you said, in our breakfast meetings, we don't get into politics much. When the conversation does veer into politics, there's a sense, it seems to me, amongst the group that things have just been a little shaky, that the world just feels a little weird. Can you tell me, in your 77 years, has there been a comparable time to where we are right now that felt the way that today feels?
Well, obviously the Second World War, I wasn't around at that point in time. But I mean, the Cold War, when I was in Germany during the Cold War, I mean, the closer to the East German border you got, the friendlier the Germans were. I mean, when you got nuclear weapons pointed at each other, I mean, you still got that. But I don't know. The country has kind of gone goofy in a lot of ways. I mean, with all this woke stuff and all this there's no common sense anymore. It's very uncommon anymore.
Yeah.
So
being as that's the case, because I think regardless of the side of the aisle you fall, whether you're left leaning or right leaning, I think that's an area where we have a shared experience. Is
right.
This is a weird time we just went through. Still continues to be. So, what makes you optimistic about the future?
Well, I'm hoping that they can bring some of the crime under control, get rid of the criminals. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think they need to rent jail space in Mexico. And take all of those people that are criminals, put them there. Let them find out what the real world's all about.
Are you optimistic about the future of?
I am more now than I was, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that driven by leadership changes?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, to see what Trump, I mean, when he with his first term, he didn't have a clue what he was doing.
Mm.
You know, I mean, he was used to business world where people listened to him, you know, and the government at that point in time, he listened to a whole bunch of lobbyists who, you know, just wanted to keep the status quo going, you know, going type
Yeah.
of thing. I mean, some of the people he hired, he never should have hired, obviously, you know. And this time around, I think he's got himself a pretty good team going.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the
I
next
think,
couple of years look like. I know that I did my part. I voted. That's about all the influence I get to have on it,
well,
right?
you know, you're one of many, but we at least brought things in the way it was supposed to be, I think.
Yeah, I think the case for optimism, even for somebody that didn't vote the direction you voted, I think there's still a case to be made for optimism there. And I don't know, my sampling is small because I live in Texas, in Bastrop County, where there's a lot of people that
Very red.
a little bit conservative in this area of the world.
Yeah,
But I
well,
think that there's enough people in my ecosystem that are, I would say, left of center. And even amongst those people, there's I would say, a growing optimism that I would not have predicted.
I think you're right. I mean, because what they tried to put up there for candidates sucked so bad it
Yeah.
was. I mean, it was horrible.
And I do think that left-leaning people saw that at the time too, and it was just kind of an eye roll, like, well, this is the best we can do, I guess. But
I mean, sure are a lot of people sucking up to him right now.
it'll be interesting to see how he handles it. That's the thing to me that I'm cautiously optimistic about, is that I feel like the things that people would say about Trump, for good reason, he's a brash dude. I feel like
he's a New Yorker. What do you expect?
He's a New Yorker.
I mean, he says what he thinks.
Yeah, I do feel like he has taken a different approach, at least since November. I feel like he has.
Oh, absolutely.
He has settled into a mode where he's surrounding himself with people that are willing to disagree with him publicly, and he's okay with it.
Oh yeah. I mean, even Melania disagrees with him.
Yeah.
So I mean,
it's something to be optimistic about, right?
Absolutely.
That's I read that book, Team of Rivals. Are you familiar with that book? It's about Lincoln's presidency, where he was one of the least likely candidates to get the Republican nomination that year. And the people that he was running against for that nomination were pretty outspoken critics of his. And when he rose to prominence and ultimately was nominated and then ultimately was elected, his cabinet choices were based on, not exclusively on, but largely on people surrounding himself with people that disagreed with him, and not having an echo chamber of people that all think the way that you do. I think that's good leadership.
Oh yeah.
So I'm excited to see what he does with it.
We're reading, it's called Confronting the Presidents, Bill O'Reilly's book. I think you'd really enjoy it. It goes through all 45 presidents.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think my grandpa is reading that one.
It's a real interesting. I mean, we think that Biden was screwed up. There was a bunch of them that are screwed up.
Yeah, is that the one where on the Trump presidency he doesn't really say a whole lot because he says that one still is that chapter's still being written?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Biden one for sure too.
That one's been given.
But he thinks that Biden's the second worst president in history.
Huh.
And I have a tendency to agree with him.
It'll be interesting to see the story that history tells of the era that we're in now.
Well, with his pardons and crap, I mean, that's just.
Yeah, we're living through that right now. More to come, probably. Well, Jim, we just did an hour in here, man. It was
holy cow.
You survived it.
I did.
It wasn't too painful, was it?
No, I hope I didn't bend your ear too hard.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I appreciate you making time to do this. I realize it's not a super comfortable thing to do. So thanks for doing it. And thanks for the friendship, as unlikely as it is.
Why is it unlikely?
Just age disparity and,
that has nothing to do with it.
It doesn't to me either.
So.
That's, I was telling this to Jim Wither after we did our episode. It's made me realize that the generation gap between people, once you get to know somebody as an adult and you recognize this reciprocal relationship where there's obviously like the young whippersnapper jokes that happen at breakfast, but I feel like I'm just in a group with guys that I would have been buddies with if you were my age. So
We're not that old.
I didn't think so. You're amongst the youngest in the group. You're one of the young ones.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. So I appreciate the friendship. I really do.
Well, I enjoyed working with you, talking to you, and like I say, I like it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being willing to do it.
Sure.